We're on the phone today with John Cafiero. He is the man behind the band Osaka Popstar. They've got a new single out. It's called The Land of Hachi Malachi. John, how you doing today?
Hey, Dustin. Pretty good, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, John, can you tell the listeners a bit about your band, Osaka Popstar, maybe for the listeners out there who haven't found you guys yet?
Sure. Osaka Popstar is my band. It's also a multimedia music and art project that expands beyond just music alone into everything from animation to toys, comic books. Beyond that, the music, I guess you could describe it as punk pop, power pop, punk rock. It's really all subjective and in the eye of the beholder, really. But the Ramones were one of my big influences, and it's kind of what I learned from them just put through my musical blender. And I produce all the music, and I'm the vocalist. I write the songs for the original material, and my backing band consists of a lot of great people. My debut record, Osaka Popstar and the American Legends of Punk, featured members of the Misfits, the Ramones, Black Flag, and the Voidoids backing me. And incarnations that followed have included members of Sparks, Milk and Cookies, Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black, The Dictators, Bob Mould, Superchunk, the Smithereens. And the most recent lineup on the new single, The Land of Hachi Malachi, is Dean Rispler, who's been with me for the past 10 years now on guitar and sometimes switching off between guitar and bass, and Dennis Dykin from the Smithereens on drums.
Yeah, it is incredible, some of the names that you've worked with, as you mentioned, Marky Ramone and Jerry Only and Daniel Johnston even. I mean, you've got quite the punk rock Rolodex there.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing people and people that I've always admired growing up and as a music fan, and it's been a great experience.
Well, John, you mentioned the new single, The Land of Hachi Malachi. I know that's a cover of an old Rosemary Clooney song, right?
Yeah, it's a really obscure children's song from the early 1950s, and it's been out of print for decades and really hard to find. It was originally performed by Rosemary Clooney, and I had heard it just by chance on this freeform radio show out of New York hosted by Uncle Floyd Vivino, and he played an old 78 of it. And my wife and I were just planning the Sweetie Candy Vigilante comic book series at the time, and when I heard it, I just thought it was a perfect fit for the vibe of the comic book, and had it earmarked to eventually do a bizarre, psychotically nice cover of for the Sweetie Candy Vigilante series, and now that's come to be.
It's funny, you mentioned the Ramones, and I know guys from Ween. A lot of these guys, they wind up working with Uncle Floyd in some capacity. It's amazing how much that guy gets around.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Floyd. I mean, he had a TV show in the late 70s through the 1980s and even into the 90s on the East Coast that was this weird, vaudevillian comedy show. And, kids would run home after school to watch it, myself included, and there were some pretty heavy hitters from the industry watching at the same time that you wouldn't know until years later, but I had found out that David Bowie and John Lennon were huge fans of the Uncle Floyd show, and they used to religiously tune in and watch every day. In fact, John Lennon had turned David Bowie onto the show. I was always a fan as a kid, and then I cast him in a role in a movie that I directed called Big Money Hustlers. He had a big part in that, and I had produced him doing a version of Shaving Cream for the Dr. Demento Covered in Punk record, and Floyd and I keep in touch, and he hosts a freeform radio show here on the East Coast called Uncle Floyd Radio.
Well, John, you mentioned the new single from Osaka Popstar, and that comes with the comic book that you mentioned, Sweetie Candy Vigilante. Can you talk a little bit about that, the comic book?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sweetie Candy Vigilante is this, we describe it as a honey-dipped, dark humor-infused horror fantasy, and it tells the story of Sweetie, who's an ethereal, beautiful, charming, well-meaning, but unquestionably unhinged supernatural being who's a blood relative of the mythological Candyman. and she becomes distraught by the decay of her community and decides that she is going to enact this blood-caked, sugar-coated manifesto on society by using her otherworldly powers and her family's proprietary secrets to make the world a sweeter place. And she's starting brick by brick in her hometown, which is New York City. And she has this candy vigilante sweet shop factory that's discreetly located in the industrial outskirts of Brooklyn in New York. And she fights organized crime with this loyal team of eccentric supernatural allies that she's assembled who share her passion to make New York City less salty, as she puts it. And she has this magical arsenal of handcrafted confectionery weapons that can be lethal to those who are bad, but they're delicious and, in some cases, life-changing for those who are good. And she's essentially psychotically nice. And it's a really unique, original series. We're into our second volume now. Volume 1 of Sweetie Candy Vigilante came out simultaneous with the release of Osaka Popstar's record Ear Candy in summer of 2022 and onward, and then the comic book series continued bi-monthly, and the first volume was just recently collected in a trade paperback that's available now, and we got a great response and have just launched volume 2 of the series. And some of the review quotes that we've got, just to kind of contextualize it for your listeners, it's been described by some reviewers as Picture Willy Wonka, directed by Quentin Tarantino, which we were really flattered by, and I think that is certainly a good assessment. And another one, which I absolutely love and I think is a really adequate and accurate, assessment of the series, is like a Technicolor grindhouse film, a gory pop color epic reminiscent of the glory days of Heavy Metal Magazine and late night cult films, endlessly imaginative. And in tying the music into the series with the approach of the Land of Hachi Malachi, since Sweetie kind of sees the world through these candy-coated glasses, even when she's causing grisly fatalities with her confectionery weapons against bad people, in the name of what she sees as good and nice, Osaka Popstar's version of the song, which is a very unique and different approach than the original, is imagined as if it's coming from her unhinged but well-meaning point of view. And I just feel like it's a perfect musical accompaniment to the current issue, Volume 2, Issue Number 1, which was just released a couple of weeks ago with the single, because it's really the same vibe as the comic. It's a lot of fun, but very bizarre. But as you mentioned, yeah, that single is a free download in the new issue, which is Issue 1, Volume 2, out now, or you can check it out on all the streaming services if you want to just hear the music.
It's awesome that you're able to combine the music with the comic series, and I know you're working with your wife as well. It's got to be cool to be able to share that with her.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a lot of fun, and it's a really rich project. And my wife Suzanne writes and created Sweetie, and I produce, edit, and art direct the series. And the first issue, actually, of Volume 1 also came with Osaka Popstar's power pop cover version of the Archie's classic Sugar Sugar. And there's a scene in issue number 1 where Sweetie is wiping out a bunch of bad guys in a seedy bar with, again, her confectionery weapons, which go from as far as, bubble gum that will, melt the flesh off of the face of a bad guy, and a red licorice whip that she can decapitate bad guys with. And she's doing all this while listening to Osaka Popstar's version of Sugar Sugar on the jukebox in the bar.
And again, that's available now. And you mentioned the first series got picked up all in one trade paperback, I think they call it, right?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. It was 6 individual issues for Volume 1 of the series that's now been collected in trade paperback, and there are a lot of variant covers. You can collect the individual issues if you can find them. We do carry them in the online sweet shop at the SweetieCandyVigilante.com website, but our comic publisher is Dynamite Comics, which is an amazing company that I always had my eye on as I thought would be the perfect home for the series. They're the same company that puts out Red Sonja, Vampirella, Army of Darkness, based on all the Sam Raimi films, Game of Thrones, The Boys, James Bond, 007, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So they've got a lot of amazing properties, and we're really happy to be with them. They were very excited by the series. As soon as I spoke to the head of the company, Nick, about the project, he immediately dug it and wanted it for Dynamite. So we're really happy to be with a great company and in really good company, and it makes it available in pretty much any comic book shop you can walk into. You should be able to find it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, the new book, I've seen bits of it, and it looks awesome, and the song is great as well. And if that wasn't enough, you also mentioned your film career. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, and your memories. You mentioned directing Big Money Hustlers. I got to ask you about working with the Insane Clown Posse, of course, but definitely Rudy Ray Moore. What was it like working with him?
That was amazing. I mean, I've been for many years a huge fan of Rudy Ray Moore and Dolomite. And the way that he came to be in the film is that I had been in talks with ICP about directing a music video for them. And then they came to me one day and said, look, we know we've been talking to you about doing a music video, but we really want to do a movie. Would you be interested in directing a movie that we star in? And I said, yeah, absolutely, of course. And then we met and we started talking about, what they wanted their characters to be like. And Shaggy Two Dope of ICP had described wanting his character to be sort of like a cross between Austin Powers and Dolomite. And I was shocked that they even knew who Dolomite was, and said, well, I'm a huge Dolomite fan. I've met Rudy before. And if you want to do something like that, why don't we take it a step further, and I'll approach Rudy and see if he'd be willing to be in the movie, and we could make him sort of the Ben Kenobi to your Luke Skywalker. And they were thrilled and said, if you could do that, we would love that. And so I actually approached Rudy, explained to him what I was doing and what I had in mind. And he had not portrayed the character of Dolomite in decades at that point. And at first he was a little hesitant because he had not portrayed the character in so long. And then we talked for about an hour. And then about an hour into the conversation, he said, no, you really understand the character, and I think this would be great, and I'm definitely willing to work with you, and I'll do it. And working with Rudy was amazing because his part in the script was fairly loose. So there was some dialogue written for him, but I always just wanted to allow him to just utilize his talent and improvise, and who's going to know Dolomite better than Rudy? So, there was a loose framework for his character in the script, and there were some parts that I had written for what Rudy was doing as well, but I would always sort of leave it open-ended for his character. So, for example, there's a scene, which was the very first day of shooting, where it basically said in the script, Dolomite teaches Sugar Bear, which was Shaggy's character, his form of Kung Fu. So I had just said to Rudy, look, you had your own unique version of Kung Fu that you always did in the Dolomite movies, and I basically just want you now in this karate dojo teaching that to Sugar Bear. So then Rudy would just take that and vamp off of, what he had done in his films, because Rudy never knew karate or kung fu. So that's why it looks so like comical in the movies, because he just made up sort of his own version. And there were these things he would do with this like side to side move with his head, and he would like make this like kind of sound and like do all of this unique fun stuff. And I basically just had him improvising and teaching that stuff to Sugar Bear in one scene, and that was just magic. And literally, I mean, Rudy was unbelievably funny and extremely talented, and he was in his 70s when we shot those scenes, and he was still as vital as ever, and so naturally gifted and naturally funny that I would literally have to clasp my hands over my mouth tightly during takes just to make sure I didn't accidentally laugh out loud and blow a take. That's how amazing it was. And watching him just do his thing and work his magic while the cameras were rolling, it really was a surreal moment that I just thought, wow, how fortunate I am to have the opportunity to do this. So yeah, working with Rudy was amazing. And after he passed away, his nephew actually even gave me some personal artifacts of Rudy's that I still have and cherish. I have Rudy's personal scrapbook from when he was making The Human Tornado, which is my favorite of his films.
And it's amazing that you guys were just kind of talking about, hey, maybe we should do a music video sometime, and it turned into this film that really became a huge hit. I mean, I think it was certified platinum even. I know a lot of people, that was kind of one of their favorites when that came out.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, to me, it was just like a fun project and sort of this underground art thing that I wanted to do, and I really did it from a place of sincerity and just paying homage to all the things I love. I mean, it's an homage to 70s exploitation movies, and I wanted it to be something, obviously it was a vehicle for Insane Clown Posse, so I wanted it to be something that their fans, the Juggalos, would absolutely love, and so I went out of my way to put Easter eggs and things in there that I knew that they would know, but at the same time, I wanted it to be something that you could know nothing about ICP and just love as a weird cult movie, and it seems to have succeeded on that level, and I'm so glad that people enjoy it, because it was not an easy movie to make. It was a very difficult experience, but I'm so happy with the end result, to this day, that it made it all worthwhile.
Well, John, another thing, I was fascinated to find your relationship with the Ramones, and Dee Dee Ramone in particular. You actually managed the estate of Dee Dee?
Yeah, I do to this day, absolutely, which is another great privilege and honor of mine. But yeah, I was a huge fan of the Ramones as a kid, and obviously still am, and they were always, my favorite band growing up, and the Misfits and the Ramones, my two favorite bands of all time, and, fortunate enough to work with both of them. But yeah, the Ramones, I started to work with them in different capacities, and I had produced, directed, and edited a documentary that I also kind of call a video scrapbook called Ramones Raw. Sure. And after doing that and talking about, my approach to certain things, Johnny Ramone had said, we really want to get you more involved in what we do. And then Johnny passed away not too long after that, and then I began managing Johnny Ramone's estate, Dee Dee Ramone's estate, 50% of all the Ramones' interest. I edited Johnny Ramone's autobiography, and I continue to manage Dee Dee Ramone's estate to this day, which, is a great honor and something that if you'd told me when I was a kid, I would have been shocked. It was just fate.
Well, I know we've seen the Dee Dee King album, Standing in the Spotlight, re-released a few years ago. Is there any other plans, do you know, to release anything from Dee Dee or maybe any other Ramones stuff that we might not have yet?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I fought and pushed Warner Brothers for many years to reissue Standing in the Spotlight because it had been out of print. So that reissue of it was something that I pushed for, and as a result of that pushing, saw through to fruition, which I was really happy to see, because while a very bizarre album, it's really genuinely good. It was Dee Dee's foray into rap. Rap was, just starting to break, in the late 80s, and Dee Dee was into it and wanted to experiment with it. So it was a very bizarre hybrid of rock and rap that Dee Dee did, but a lot of the songs are very Ramones-oriented, so much so that even after Dee Dee left the band, he stayed on board as their main songwriter, because he was the main songwriter. And the final Ramones album that Dee Dee doesn't play on but still wrote for, one of the songs from Standing in the Spotlight, The Crusher, the Ramones actually re-recorded and covered for the Adios Amigos album, and that's on Standing in the Spotlight. And there's a whole catalog of amazing Dee Dee solo material that he had done after leaving the Ramones, some of which that's never even been released in America. And I worked to reacquire all of that stuff back for Dee Dee's estate, along with his wife Barbara. And right now we're in the process of remixing. We've transferred digitally all of the original material from source reels that I recovered, and in a higher bit rate, which is now available. Technology has come quite a long way since those days. And so all of that material has actually been transferred digitally, top-notch quality, and in the process of being remixed. Right now, Ed Stasium, who was one of the original engineers and also at times producer and co-producer on Ramones material, is remixing some of that stuff right now, along with Barbara and I, and we plan to start reissuing Dee Dee's solo catalog album by album starting next year. It's going to be very exciting to see that all get a rebirth.
Wow, yeah, that is awesome news. Because a lot of that stuff, as you know, obviously, if you weren't there and bought it when it came out, it's gone now, unless you want to spend hundreds of dollars and Discogs or something to pick it up.
Absolutely. It's long out of print. And honestly, I mean, when I recovered the material and was having the original reels transferred so that, because, these tapes, they don't last forever. And they become very brittle and fragile, and to even transfer them, to preserve them so that they're always preserved for life, so to speak, you have to bake the reels, and then when you play them down, a lot of the times the particles start falling off, and if you're not transferring it while that's happened, the material's just gone forever. So all of those reels have been baked, digitally transferred, and when I was hearing the transfers go down, the quality is just so much more rich and dynamic than it was back in the late 80s and on into the 90s and early 2000s when Dee Dee was putting this stuff out. So I think people are going to be thrilled because you're going to hear the original material just as he intended it, but with a much higher quality and dynamic, and in some cases a much better mix, because some of these mixes were rushed back then and weren't the best quality or the best material available to them at the time or resources. So it's really exciting to hear the boost up in this material and see that it's going to get this whole resurgence and rebirth, and many people that never even had the opportunity to hear it, because as I mentioned, some of it was never even released in America, and some of that stuff is some of the best material yet.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And John, I know we've touched on a lot of stuff here, but again, Osaka Popstar's got the new single out, The Land of Hachi Malachi, with the Sweetie Candy Vigilante comic. Are you going to be playing any shows this year or doing anything as far as being out on the road?
I kind of had hoped to maybe do some shows this year, but I've got so much on my plate, I don't know that that's going to happen. But if not this year, certainly next. I mean, the band and I really do want to do some, and there's a whole new Osaka Popstar EP that's already been recorded that I just have to finish vocals on a couple of tracks and then finish the mixing. So I'm hoping to have that out, if not by the end of this year, sometime next. So while there's no shows scheduled right now, is certainly a possibility maybe later in the year, but if not, certainly next year with the release of the new EP that'll be coming. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm working on producing the entire Volume 2 of Sweetie Candy Vigilante. That issue number 1, Volume 2 just came out a couple of weeks ago. Issue 2 will be out in April, and then bi-monthly thereafter, so that's going on. I'm actually in production right now on Dr. Demento Covered in Punk Volume 2 to get that wrapped up by the end of the year for release next, and a new Osaka Popstar EP, and as I mentioned, and I manage the Misfits, and they have a lot of shows coming up, and then working on the Dee Dee stuff, so there's a lot going on at the same time.
That is awesome. I know the first time you and I spoke was when the first Dr. Demento collection came out. Is the second one, is that going to be kind of the same deal, or different bands this time around, or?
Oh, absolutely. It's different. It's the same concept, but different bands, different songs. And also because it is sort of the follow-up in the second volume, it's going to get even weirder. So yeah, we're taking the concept of the first album, remaining true to it, and then elaborating on it, in some instances here and there. But we've got an amazing lineup. I don't want to give anything away quite yet, but if you like the first album, then you will absolutely love the next one, because it's equally demented, if not a little bit more so, and amazing lineup, just like the first one. There's a couple of people from the first record that'll return, and then an all-new lineup of artists, because we want to keep it fresh and mix it up a little bit. But it's really exciting, and it's coming out amazing. And that's, like I said, I'm in the middle of production on that now. I'm working on a bunch of the tracks.
Yeah, that's between that and the Dee Dee Ramone news. I mean, that's that's some awesome stuff coming down the pike here. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, I try and keep it interesting and do the things I love. It keeps it fun.
Excellent, man. Again, it's been great speaking with you. I'm excited for all the stuff that's coming up here, and hopefully we can speak again down the road here when this stuff starts coming out.
Absolutely, Dustin. Thanks. I really appreciate your support. I'm glad you're digging the stuff that I'm doing, and feel free to keep in touch, and I'll be happy to hook you up with stuff and talk to you anytime.
And again, that was John Cafiero and his band Osaka Popstar. Their new single, The Land of Hachi Malachi, is available now. It comes with a new issue of the Sweetie Candy Vigilante comic. Find out more at osakapopstar.com.